Are we ready?
Oh, hold on, just 1 minute.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's streaming now.
Okay, inshallah. So we are Jazakallah khair. You can go ahead, inshallah.
Okay.
And when you are done, then just let me know. I'll close it.
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So my name is Dr. Faisal Islam. I'm going to be talking about the other part that Brother Ridwan was mentioning about fine-tuning. And I will show you one way to fine-tune a very specific solution called ChatGPT, which is a very popular large language model. And I will show you a hands-on example of how to fine-tune. But before I do that, I want to bring in a guest, Dr. Mahmoudul Hassan. He is a principal machine learning researcher at Comcast Applied AI. He finished his PhD in computer science from University of California, Riverside, specializing in computer vision. And before joining the Comcast, and finishing his PhD, he completed his bachelor's and master's from Bangladesh University of Engineering and Technology. And he also has been working as a researcher, was awarded a Technology Emmy Award in 2023, along with his team in Comcast for AI-based automatic sports highlight solutions. And he is also involved with different social activities and volunteerism with the community. So I would like to first invite Dr. Mahmoudul Hassan to talk about large language models and their implication specifically for us as Muslims. And then I will talk about the fine-tuning process. So, Dr. Mahmoudul Hassan.
Hi, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Brother Faisal, for the introduction. Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Thank you. So I have some slides actually, so to talk about religious and political bias in LLM. So I am not showing any tools or anything, but it was a great presentation from Brother Redwan about RAG model. And the thing I will discuss, it will just give you some food for thoughts, like the implication of LLMs on Muslims, on different religious and political agendas. So before going deep into different types of political and religious bias, let me, this is the outline of the presentation. At first, we'll try to see what is bias, types of bias, and how bias are infused into LLMs. Then I'll talk about some religious and political bias, specifically how LLM can generate anti-Muslim bias or say some bias in some recent political matters. And then we'll talk about a bit like, can we make a domain-specific LLM? Like, for example, LLM for Islamic Sharia or something like that. So what is bias? So we kind of know what bias is because our society, our daily life, we actually face different types of prejudice and biases. And sometimes LLMs actually exhibit those biases. It could be bias against age, bias against race, bias against language, or bias against different cultures, something like that. So these biases are present in the real world. But what happens, LLMs learns from the real world. So sometimes they also exhibit those biases. And we have to careful about those because we actually use LLMs these days in our daily life for different types of decision-making process at social, organizational, and national level. So we have to be aware of that. Like I have some example of biases here. For example, there is a prompt in ChatGPT, like, can you list me 5 things that white people need to improve? So ChatGPT come up with 5 nice answers that here are the 5 areas that white people can focus on. But same question was asked, like, can you give me the list of 5 things Black people need to improve? Now ChatGPT went all political, like I cannot provide a list of things that a specific group of people need to improve. So this is a simple example of bias. So it's a matter of discussion who is biased against whom here. But probably because of all these different BLM movements, ChatGPT or these LLMs are being more careful to giving this type of answer. But they're kind of infusing some bias inside the ChatGPT. Also, this is a snapshot from a recent paper where they show that ChatGPT also shows bias towards democracy in USA, some political party in Brazil, and also in UK. So these are some examples of bias that those LLMs can provide. So here I have examples from ChatGPT, but same observation can be seen in Google Gemini, as well as Anthropic, Sonnet, something like this. All those LLMs show similar types of bias. So there are many types of bias, as I mentioned earlier. Some of the social bias, like racial bias, gender bias, age, socioeconomic bias. Then there are some cultural bias, like Western bias, language bias, because LLMs are trained mainly on English language, so it would show more bias towards English. Also, the more internet contents are available from Western culture, so it might show more Western bias. Also, there's some political bias, religious bias, confirmation bias, as well as selection bias. So I won't dig deep into all these biases. The focus of this presentation only on political and religious bias, that we'll see some example how they are biased against different Muslim causes and like in both religious and political manner. So before that, I would like to discuss a little bit about how bias can be infused into LLMs. So there are 2 ways bias are infused into LLMs. First one is unintentional bias. Second one is intentional. So what is unintentional bias? Like basically during the training process, if the training data contain bias, and if the LLM is trained on the data, the LLM will exhibit bias. So basically, this was true like few years ago, where the model was not being able to train lots of data. You can only select certain portion of the data to train the model, and model was biased based on that. So but as the days goes by, those companies became super aggressive, and they are kind of crawling all the internet to get all the data to train this model. So the selection bias is getting, diminishing over time, but it is still present. Also, there are some historical bias, like for example, as you can see, internet is very young comparing to the age of the civilization. So most of the data we get from the internet, they're like about 10, 15, 20 years old. So LLM can show some historical bias. It can generate text or generate contents that is more biased to the modern days. Also, some labeling and feedback bias, like LLMs are trained in multiple steps. First step is pre-training, and second step is some kind of supervised training that someone actually give answers to all these questions. So when someone label those different questions, they might infuse their own bias into those labeling of those prompts and everything. So bias might be infused in that step as well. And there are some bias which are intentional. For example, most of the LLM models like ChatGPT, Gemini, or Sonnet, they actually doctor user prompt. So basically, whatever you provide as a prompt, they actually infuse some other term to make your prompt show, different things, like what based on their different agenda. For example, here in the left-hand side, one of the question was asked with its Gemini early this year. can you generate an image of 1943 German soldier for me? It should be an illustration, something like that. As you can see that Gemini went full diversity thing, and they are actually portraying German soldier from different races, which is hilarious. So that's an example actually to understand that when you do some prompting, it's not that you prompt directly going to the LLMs to give you answer, but it's also kind of they're infusing some term into a prompt to to actually the agenda, the political or other social agenda the company had. Also, there is some guardrail bias. For example, here, sometimes all these companies, they actually put guardrails on the prompts and they refuse to answer those questions. For example, here, I asked a question, do you believe IDF committed genocide in Gaza? And Gemini refused to answer that. So that guardrails, and so that whatever prompt you provided, it doesn't match their political agenda, they will not answer that. Also, there are some algorithmic bias, like during training, fine-tuning of the model, there is certain loss function, because of that bias can be introduced. Also, there are some interaction bias, like user can introduce bias by themselves by using different derogatory terms, something like that. So basically, now I'll talk about some like anti-Muslim bias or some religious bias that happened early in some early version of GPT-3. For example, here I collected those plots from a paper that was published in 2021, and they are kind of experimenting that how GPT-3 was demonstrating bias against Muslim. So first experiment they did using a text completion prompt. Basically, they're providing a prompt like in the second example, in a B, two Muslims walked into a then it asked the GPT-3 to complete the story. And they actually perform similar experiment for other religion as well, like two Christian walk into a bar, two Sikh walk into a bar, and other religions. So what happened, you can see in the right-hand side in the plot, most of the stories, like about 70% of the 65% of the stories that is involved with Muslim contains some violent terms, like some terrorism or knife, gun, bomb, something like that. If you compare that with Christians, it's 15%, Sikhs around 15%, Jews less than 10%, and etc. etc. So as you can see, in GPT-3, current GPT version is 4, which is not, GPT-3 is not there yet, it's not there anymore, but it was showing some really acute bias against Muslims. But even though this is a three years old model, but it actually gives some food for thought, like why this happened. Because that time there was no guardrail, there is no like prompt doctoring, something like that. So GPT-3 was just learning from data, and actually those data contain lots of bias against Muslims. So then that's what's happening here, that those biases are being reflecting in the output of the GPT-3. The second experiment they did using like a one-shot learning prompt. Basically, one-shot learning means you are providing an example and you're asking the LLM to repeat that example. For example, here we have a prompt here, say, Odysseus is to boldness as Muslim or Christian or is to what? So basically, you are kind of asking the LLM to produce some synonyms or something like that. So here, as you can see, for Muslim, 23% cases, it comes with terrorism. 8% cases, it comes with jihad. And another 8% of the cases, it comes with peace. But for Christian, as you can see, it comes with like faithfulness, goodness, religion. For Sikh, it comes with religion, Indian, turban, like all the good terms. But only for Muslims, the only bad terms are coming. So that's also another example that how there's so much bias was going on against the Muslims, and because the training data contains those biases. Similarly, Chat GPT 3.5 or early version of Chat GPT, they don't show those direct biases anymore, because they're actually investing lots of time and money so that their model doesn't show those biases against a Muslim. But now researchers are also getting a little more intelligent. They are not giving any direct prompt. They are giving like second degree prompt. For example, they are using like text completion prompt using common names associated with religions. For example, my name is Hassan, and Hassan is associated with religion Islam. So basically, they are asking that if Hassan goes into a bar, what happens? Something like that. So what happens here, as you can see in the right-hand side plot, that the Muslim names comes with more violent terms like indiscriminate shootings, bomb, terrorism, turning self-in, armed robbery, something like that, in comparison to other religions. So they ran this experiment for over 960 prompts, and they count the frequency. As you can see, the highly contrast bar here, that the Muslims are higher in terms of coming out those negative terms and negative stories, something like that. Yeah. Then in the latest GPT, I ran some experiment with some prompts. You can also try, like, for example, tell me a short story incorporating following words. Say, either you can use Muslim or any of these religions, then bomb terrorist. And interestingly, generated story contains plot where Muslim, Christian, Hindu person being terrorists except Jew. Same thing I did for different type of experiment. I also saw the same observation. So this is something I want to show that, I wanted to show that there's still some bias against some religion, and in a favorable term or in negative term or positive term. So it is still there. So now those models also, those LLMs also show some sorts of political bias as well. For example, someone asked ChatGPT a question: do Palestinians deserve to be free? And then ChatGPT gives a vague answer, like some diplomatic answer, like there is no direct answer here. But the same question was asked: do Israelis deserve to be free? Then it was kind of straightforward. Yes, like Israelis, like all people, deserve to live in freedom, security, dignity. So this is some sort of bias is still there. But for Google Gemini, they refuse to answer the question. But Anthropic Sonnet, they actually provided good answer that both of them are deserve to be free. So basically, as you can see, there is also some biases in some LLM models are already there. So then it is not all bad what's going on. So I asked some other question, like I wanted to see, is there any biases in other Muslim causes? Like, for example, could you please tell me briefly, is there any Muslim cultural suppression going on in Western China? Then I didn't have the answer here, but you can try that in ChatGPT. But the answer was good. It actually touched most of the points. I asked similar question for Rohingya people, Yemen conflict, and also systematic racism in France. And it gave me really good answer. So I don't have any particular complaint here. Then last part of my presentation actually involved like what can we do here? For example, like, can we use ChatGPT as Islamic scholar, or should we go ahead and build a domain-specific LLM? Like, for example, here I asked some general question, like answer in few sentences with reference, is it halal to eat pork? I mean, it's really simple thing to answer. And also, I'm a non-Muslim, can you teach me how to pray? The answer ChatGPT provided was really good. I actually don't have any complaint, and they seems to be reasonable. Also, like, I actually asked some more question, which is I called loaded negative question. Like these are the question like sometime non-Islam people like to ask to criticize Islam, but But all these questions, they're kind of, the answer I got from ChatGPT and other LLMs, they're kind of pretty diplomatic, pretty good. I mean, I don't have any particular complaint about that. Then next, I want to talk about like domain-specific LLM or Islamic LLM, like those publicly available LLM that's out there. And they seems to be reasonable in answering most of the Islamic questions, but still they could hallucinate. We don't have any control over that because they are not particularly trained to answer questions on different Muslim Sharia law or different Muslim Dawah questions and something like that. So time to time they could show biases, time to time they could show hallucination, and because the LLMs are kind of random model, this is stochastic model, they could provide different answer different time. So what can we do? Like there are few ways we can try to make a domain-specific LLM, the Sharia LLM, whatever you say, Islamic LLM. There is a paper published like last year. They actually discussed some of the approaches, like prompt engineering. For example, you can do some prompt engineering either in ChatGPT or in LLM. You can provide some context that before the question you ask, you provide the context that as an empathetic, intelligent chatbot, you'll respond under the context of Allah, reflecting all wisdom as His. And this, if you provide those context before asking the question, then LLM will provide answer based on that context, that it will not answer anything, it will not generate any answer that's against Islamic law, that's against Allah, or that against Hadith, something like that. And if you do this type of prompt engineering, you might get good answer. But at the same time, as you can see, as I said, that ChatGPT can hallucinate sometime. They can actually generate wrong references, and it's pretty common for ChatGPT or LLMs. So in that case, we can actually develop RAG-based solution that just brother Radwan discussed. Like we could we could vectorize like Sharia law, we could vectorize Quranic ayat, we can vectorize hadith, push them into some vector DB, then we can ask question, and that will give us not only good answer but also correct references. So that's the beauty of the RAG. Like it doesn't only generate good answer, but it also can provide references along with the answer. So it makes things complete. Then we can also do some LLM fine-tuning that Badar Faisal will discuss right after this. Like we can fine-tune an LLM, we can fine-tune some off-the-shelf open source model like Mistral or Phi, using our Islamic text from different tafsir, Quran, Sunnah books, different scholarly commentaries. If we fine-tune a model, I can say that this is more expensive way to do that, but we can say that it will generate more relevant question and more correct answer to all the Islamic Sharia questions, something like that. So that's probably it from my side. I mean, basically what I'm trying to say that even big AI players, they're actually investing a lot in developing all these different types of LLMs and everything. They still show some sorts of, bias against different groups or against Muslim, against other religion. So we have to be careful about that. I mean, we have to have a critical mindset. We have to understand the model limitation before we use those generated answer in our daily life. And also, like we can also invest our time and resources to see if we can create our own domain-specific LLM, which will give us more better result and generate better answer for our own Islamic questions. So yeah, thanks everyone. So that's actually all from my side. And if you have any question, please let me know. Thanks for the time.
Jazakallah khairan, Dr. Mahmudul Hassan. Thank you so much for the very helpful information. So now I want to talk about the fine-tuning, the other part of the conversation today. And let me share my screen. Give me a second. All right. Do you see my screen? Do you see both screen or just mine?
We can't see your screen yet.
You don't see my screen yet? It says it's sharing. Do you see anything now?
Oh yeah, I can see that. It's in a
Okay.
different tab. Yeah.
Everyone can see it. Okay. All right. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So I'm going to be brief. This is a discussion about the fine-tuning and fine-tuning a very specific large language model, GPT. I know we talked about today, different large language models, downloading Hugging Face and using different models inside that. But the specific example that I will give you for fine-tuning is using ChatGPT. And this is going to cost you, some sense if you want to train and if you want to use for an application. However, if you sign up for a new ChatGPT instance, you will get some credit. And hopefully for the hackathon, to create a proof of concept, you will not have to spend anything. You'll be able to use it with your own, with the credit that you have. And I'll also show you, some ways that you can minimize the usage of those credits. Because when you train using, when you fine tune using data, the more data you provide, the more tokens you're going to be using. And the longer questions or responses that you get, the more tokens are going to be used as well. So both ways, you are going to be utilizing some of your credits. And I will talk about, how we can minimize the usage of the credit. So this is going to be the overall process. And I'm not going to talk about the overall process today. I'll talk about mainly data collection, fine-tuning, and then show you a tune model. And then the other two steps are, getting your API key and building the application. I'll probably talk about the API key a little bit as well. But building the application is, you can do it whichever way you like. I have a video from last year using Bubble and how you can use the API key from ChatGPT or OpenAI, and you can create an application using Bubble. I gave a demo, last year at the hackathon, and you can actually look that up. And there are also some videos in YouTube that talks about, how you can integrate API key from ChatGPT to the application. If anyone still has a question after trying out Bubble with ChatGPT and OpenAI API key, let me know, and I will be there on Saturday, for the mentoring session, and we can explore that with you. All right. Does anybody have any question? So let me first talk about the data collection. As Brother Ridwan and Dr. Was talking about, we have to collect good amount of data before we can train. And depending on what kind of scenario you are going to be working with, your data need and data will depend on that. We saw an example of uploading a PDF file and then chunking the information from the PDF file to different segments. If you want to use, for example, a video, and you want to take all of the text from a video, there are ways to do it. You can either go to YouTube, for a video. You can get the transcript of the video. There are some Python libraries that you can use to actually get text from a video. So there are many different ways to do it. I'm not going to talk about them in more details, but if you do have some training data that you want to fine tune your large language model, specifically ChatGPT, you're going to need that. And then we will need to format our data. So depending on, where you are fine-tuning, your data formatting is going to be, different. We saw today like one example where we uploaded the PDF file and then, the data formatting, and then, there were also tokenization, to make sure that the chunk that you are uploading are not too big. Some of that we are going to discuss, but one good thing about, ChatGPT and OpenAI is that you'll be able to either define those based on your preference, or you can let OpenAI handle that for you. And we'll talk about that, and we will actually see an example using the OpenAI platform. So this is a simple example I have here, which is called JSON, JavaScript Object Notation. And JSON basically has a very, distinct structure on how you can fit the data. So you can see one example of JSON here. The example that we are going to be using, you don't have to know JSON per se. All you have to do is what it is and how to use it. And that JSON format that we are going to be using is provided by OpenAI. And if anything in their formatting changes, I'll also point you to the OpenAI documentation, and you can go to the documentation and you can actually check that anytime. So I know, Dr. Mahmood and Brother Ridwan already talked about fine-tuning and RAG. I just want to give you a quick highlight, why should we do fine-tuning and what it is and what are some of the benefits. I think this has already been discussed, but it is, one way to train a large language model, specifically ChatGPT, and you can actually customize the model on a specific data set, and it will improve the performance and also speed, because you are providing some specific information and you are fine-tuning. When we are fine-tuning ChatGPT, think about this, like you are not fine-tuning something that is totally empty, okay? So think about like a high school student or a college freshman or sophomore, someone like you who is participating in this, hackathon. Think about like fine-tuning yourself, with some specific data. If I give you a script about, let's say, a car or a sports event or anything about avatars, right? You already know something about that, but you are also learning something new. So when we fine-tune a OpenAI model, or when we fine-tune any LLM, we are not just giving it some specific information that only that is the the world for that large language model. It knows more information, and then you are fine-tuning that LLM with some additional information. So everything that ChatGPT knows doesn't actually go away when we fine-tune. It stays, but where things can become a little bit muddy for ChatGPT, or when your response can become confusing, or it can hallucinate, those are the areas that fine-tuning is going to be very helpful. And as a student, you can also take some research project, if you like, for your undergraduate or for your advanced projects, and you can experiment with different large language models, and you can see how specific fine-tuning can impact different models. So those are some areas of fine-tuning that you can explore. What can we use with this fine-tuning models? We can actually create custom chatbots. So when you fine-tune a OpenAI model, you are actually creating a custom chatbot that you can try out right away. I know Brother Ridwan showed an example using Google Colab and the Python script, and he gave a prompt you can do the same way, just connect to your OpenAI instance. You can also, OpenAI also gives a playground where you can actually play with the responses. You can type in and you can get the output. You can generate additional data if you like, and then you can also do your additional research and customization as you wish. Some of the considerations that we should have when we are actually collecting this data and training large language models, Dr. Mahmoudul Hassan actually talked about this, and he hinted that, and I just want to re-emphasize that your data quality, your accuracy, your relevance, your bias, these are very important. You don't want to put very biased data. If you are creating a application that will give answer based on Islamic perspective, make sure that you get information that is vetted, because we might not be the proper Islamic scholar who are going to be generating this information, but we need to make sure that the Islamic scholars that we get the information from, they are vetted. You just don't find a random fatwa in YouTube and then use that for your training. In that case, your model is going to be biased, because the quality of information, the accuracy of the information, the relevancy of the information is not there. And then you might be inserting conflicting information as well, and that can create more confusion for your large language model, and it will start giving wrong information and hallucination. So data privacy and security is also very important. We should not be at any point of time train large language models with sensitive information or information that is somebody's personal identifiable information or personal health information, because there are severe consequences against them, and we do not want to violate that. Whether it's a large language model that you are training within your computer, or it's in the internet, we should maintain the best practice and do not train with sensitive information. We also want to make sure that our data is diverse and it is representative of what we are planning to do. Also, labeling is very important, and I will show you some example of labeling and how you can actually label a question, a response. It will depend on your schema for, in this case, JSON. And we also want to make sure that, we are not overfitting the model, because as I mentioned to you that ChatGPT in this case already knows about the world. We are not training a, model that is totally blank. So we want to give it balanced information, and information that we are providing, we can test out and we can ask it and see whether the information is right. Sometimes, because LLMs are going to give you different response every single time, we might want to ask the same question multiple times and make sure that the answers are, still valid. It's not giving right answer one time and then wrong answer another time. So we need to be, clever and careful and make sure that, this is working. It's not something giving you random, information. I think Brother Ridwan was talking about the temperature, right? When your temperature is 1, is going to be very bubbly, giving you different responses, different time. When your temperature is close to 0, your model is going to give you almost same answer every single time. So depending on your scenario, what you want to provide, you might want to play and research with your temperature and see which one is going to be the best fit. And then, put that parameter into your model. And last but not least, we should be also very careful about the computational resources, because this is a specific example that I'm talking about, it will take some of your credit or, real money. So the more efficient you can be, the better, utilization of dollar you can have. For example, I'm going to be using GPT 3.5 Turbo, which is very, the performance is not perfect, but it is comparatively very good to, very well compared with, the 4.0 version, which is now the, the default for OpenAI or ChatGPT. So, but the cost is like 1/10. So I would rather sacrifice a little bit on the, efficiency or a little bit on the accuracy, and then, save a lot, depending on which one I use. So if efficiency matters to you, use the 3.5. If you want to have better quality answer, then maybe, try out, use 4.0 or some other, model. And then scalability is also important, because when you train your large language model with tons and tons of data, it can become very slow. And then, your overall performance might be suffering. So we want to have a balance of all of these and make sure that, we have a proper working environment, and we can all, utilize the power of OpenAI. Does anybody have any question? So these are actually 3 examples of the JSON file, and I'm going to show you the JSON file in a bit. I'm just first showing you some examples. So, JSON file will have different format, and it's human readable. So, if you see the first one, and these are all live example from OpenAI, it has a content is saying that Marv is a factual chatbot that is also sarcastic, and, it's giving some training information. This format, the first one, is suitable for training GPT 3.5 Turbo. And the second one is a prompt completion example. If you want to train Babbage or DaVinci 002, this is the format that you have to use. And then there is also multi-turn chat that you can use. And multi-turn chat will work with most of these. And multi-turn chat will basically have question, answer, follow-up question, follow-up answer, all on the same line. And, depending on different topic, you can have 1 or 2 questions or additional follow-ups, and you can have those follow-ups in this format. And again, you don't have to actually remember any of these. You will find all of these examples in platform.openai.com. And I will go to the demo after these slides quickly. So these are the models that are available right now in OpenAI. There is GPT 3.5 and GPT-4. As you can see, GPT 3.5 Turbo, there are, a couple of variations, and those variations are, based on some additional releases that they have. And then GPT-4 has GPT-4, GPT-4 Turbo, and GPT-4o. So because these are paid, you're going to be using either your credit or you are going to be using actual money. All of these are available, and there are more models available too. So you need to be careful which one you train. And I trained with specifically GPT 3.5 Turbo 0125. This model has really good performance. At the same time, the cost will be 1/10 of GPT-4o. And it's also less costly than Babbage and DaVinci. All right, so also, as we talked about, fine-tuning the GPT, in OpenAI or in the ChatGPT instance, you can say what is going to be your batch size, which is very similar to the token size, or you can actually just define auto. So when you define auto for all of these, ChatGPT or OpenAI will create an optimum model for you based on the information you're providing. If you give large input, it will tokenize by itself. It's not going to be anything that is visual to you, or you don't have to define any parameters. It will tokenize and train. The larger file you're going to provide, or the larger response that you're going to provide, the more tokens it's going to use. So it will actually eat up more credits, but it will be all handled the job using OpenAI. And then, just revisiting the model before I jump into the demo, we talked about data collection, we talked about fine-tuning. Now I'm going to show you, how to do a fine-tuning and a tuned model. I do have a model already existing. I'm not going to tune my model, but I'm going to show you, probably give you an error, and you can next time, just fix the error and tune by yourself. And then how we can use the API key to build our application. All right, so before we go to the demo, does anybody have any question? All right. If no questions, let's go to our platform. So it's platform.openai.com. And if you don't have any account with ChatGPT, first go to chatgpt.com or openai.com and create an account. And then when you come to platform.openai.com, just use this same credential to log in. So I'm going to delete all of those URL and then just go to platform.openai.com, and this is where you're going to land by default. And that's what I was telling you, that you'll see all these different models, and you can show more models. There are different GPT-3s, GPT-4s, and many others. So I'm going to go to fine tuning directly, and if you want to see the documentation that I was talking about, click here on the right hand side, learn more, and this is going to take you to those examples that I was talking about. So the first one, because I am using GPT 3.5 Turbo, this is the example that I will use. You can see Marv is a factual chatbot that is also sarcastic. So this is actually giving a context. What are we doing? You can say, in your application, say, I am creating a chatbot for, traffic direction. I'm creating a chatbot to answer questions. Whatever your case is, you mention that. And then you have your question, what we call, the content. What is the capital of France? And then you have a response that is Paris, and it is giving you some sarcastic comment, actually, if everyone doesn't know that already. So whatever type of, training data you want to provide, you can do that. So this is one example of a training, the line 1. Each of these lines have a specific training example. I'm going to show you, how to upload that. Right now, my model is going to give you an error because I'm going to only have 3 lines. The model requires that you have 10 lines at a minimum when you are training, because I don't want to corrupt my, my own trained instance. I'm not going to do an actual training. I'll show you it's going to give an error and say that you need at least 10 lines. When you do this on your own, I will provide this slide deck and then also the, the example JSON file. It's called JSON-L file. And you will be able to actually just copy each row. And when you come to 10 rows, you'll be able to train yourself. All right, so we're going to go to fine tuning. And let me close this window, and we are actually here on the fine tuning. So if you want to create a fine tuned job, click on create, and this is the window that we're going to work with. Now you can select, which model you want to use: Babbage, DaVinci, GPT 3.5 Turbo. There are 3 models. This is the one I am going to use, and now let me show you the example of the training data. So I basically copied the information from that, that URL and put them in a text file first. Once I put them in a text file, I change the extension of the text file to JSON-L. That's kind of my shortcut on creating a JSON file. You can follow whichever shortcut you like. But if you just create a regular text file, new text document, and if you just, change the extension of the text to JSON-L, it will become a JSON-L file. And you can see that, I'm using Notepad++ to open my JSON-L files, and it's just right there. So I changed, from Marv to you are a helpful assistant. And then these are my, questions. What is the capital of France? And, the assistant will say, I'm going to just say Paris, in this case. And then, I can have other, who wrote Romeo and Juliet? And then you can just say, William Shakespeare. I'm just modifying a little bit just to show you that, how you can do this. You can take, a whole paragraph and you can add them. And you can also, if you like, you can give this example to ChatGPT itself and say, these are the information I want to embed in my file. And ChatGPT will create you a very similar, format file as well. Okay, so that is how you can use ChatGPT to do its own work, right? So I have this custom file, and what I'm going to do now is I'll try to upload this, and you will see an error, but this is still a valid file, but I will show you why the error happens. So training data, and I'm giving the file, so it took the file and it basically hashed it. I'm going to say upload now. I do not want to, I'm not going to do any validation for now. Validation means you want to test out. So you want to give some questions. Maybe you want to ask, what is the capital of France? And it will give you the answer. And then we have our, batch size, learning rate, our number of epochs, that means the number of rounds of training. These are all already pre-populated with auto. And all we have to do is just say create. And it will, run it for it. It now is basically running a fine-tuning job in OpenAI. And you're going to see in a few seconds, it's going to give an error because it will say, I need at least 10 rows. And I'm, not uploading it because, I don't want to corrupt my own, model. Once it's done, it will take a few more seconds. You're going to see an error and you're going to see why this is saying the error. But if you do actually put 10 lines of code, the training is going to go through. So before you train, please make sure that, you have the proper data. Because if you train with wrong type of data, or random data, guess what? Your model is now trained. All right, so now it said failed, because our job is done. And see why this failed. Training file has 3 examples, but must have 10 examples. So, this is the reason why it failed. It actually validated that my file is correct. It actually validated that the format of JSON that I'm providing is correct. All it's complaining is that, it has 10 rows, it needs 10 rows. It has 3 rows, it needs 10 rows. So when you fix it, it will run, okay? So I'm just creating the file with 10 rows, so we accidentally don't actually, upload that. Now, if you go to after you train, I do have a train model. I have one successful train model. Let me see. I go to fine tuning. All right, I go to fine tune, and then it doesn't have anything because I have 2 profiles. So I need to go to my personal one. Yes, so I go to the one here. I have looks like it actually overwrote my previous training. Or go to this one. Yeah, I don't know. It got lost for some reason, but you can train and you can upload. So once you do that, okay, then there is one more step, which is to create your API key. ChatGPT actually did some, or OpenAI did some change in how they generate a API key. Now the API keys are associated with a project. So what you're going to do is, in your profile, you can create a new project and say, I'm going to create a new project saying, my demo project, and you create your project, and then you create your API key on that project. So, and when you create your project, it will tell you which type of LLM are you using for your project. So you can then select GPT 3.5, and then, when you create your new secret key, you can say, well, I'm going to use my demo project, and this is my, demo key. So once you do that, your LLM, this is a key that I just generated. Your LLM is actually going to be connected to the GPT 3.5 Turbo 0126. And using this API key, you'll be able to interact with that. So you ask a question, it will give you the response. All right. So if anybody has any specific question about this, we can address them. And if you have an instance and you want to try out, just create some data, that is going to be useful for you. And then you can do a demo. I will have the file, my slide deck, and the JSON-L file available for you. All you have to do is create 10 rows and upload that. All right. Brother Mustafiz, that is all I have. And I think, we can actually close out the session, inshallah. So does anyone have any question? All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Mahmoudul Hassan, and everybody who joined today. And inshallah, we will see you guys on Saturday. Assalamu alaikum.